Suppose you are sick and the doctor tells you there is a surgery that can relieve you from all your problems but leads to severe complications in 10% of patients. Would you do it? Hell no! But what would your decision be if your doctor framed the surgery differently? Suppose your doctor would say that 90% of patients have no serious complications. Would you do it now? Hell yes! It's a fact that more people would do the surgery if it was framed the second way, even though mathematically it's exactly the same. Yeah, I know, we humans are weird. Hi, my name is Felix, and in this video I show you how to use fear of loss to drive innovation in your company. Framing doesn't just play a role in surgeries. Whenever we make decisions, the way something is framed matters a lot. The theoretical basis for this is provided by the prospect theory, which was established by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. It states that people want to avoid losses and they choose risky or less risky behavior depending on how a decision is framed. Let's do a little test. You have the choice of getting $50 for sure, or flipping a coin, and depending on whether you're right on the coin flip, getting either $100 or nothing at all. Unless you are a gambling addicted maverick, you would probably prefer the safe $50 and thus choose not to take the risk. But what if you were to lose $50 for sure? Suppose you have a sure loss of $50. The money is gone, burned, lost, and there's nothing you can do about it. Or maybe there is. Maybe now I offer you a coin toss that you can use to prevent your loss. Now it gets more exciting. If you're right with your guess this time, you're losing nothing. Absolutely nothing. Everything goes back to the way it was before. But if you're wrong, you will lose $100 instead of just $50. A 50-50 chance. What do you do? Now, interestingly, most people would choose the risky option, with the hope of losing nothing, even if they risk losing $100 in the worst case. Why is that? The theory states that, among other things, that we feel losses of the same amount emotionally about twice as much as gains of the same amount. In addition, losing $100 hurts us only slightly more than losing $50, so we don't feel like we're losing much when we choose the risky option. This phenomenon of being more excited about not losing $50 than winning $50 is called loss aversion, and it can strongly influence our actions. For example, I use loss aversion to motivate myself to write a book. To do this, I use an app called Beeminder. Here you set your goals, like how often you want to exercise per week, for example, or in my case, how many words you want to write per day, and then you have to check in regularly and tell the app what you have actually done. If you don't meet your daily goals for too long in a row, you cross a red line and you have to pay a financial penalty. Of course, no one feels like paying a penalty for their own set goals, so you're extremely eager to achieve them. So the app uses loss aversion specifically to manipulate one's behavior and so that as a result you reach your set goals more easily. Loss aversion is directly related to risk aversion. Since we hate losses more than we love gains, we want to avoid risk whenever possible. It makes sense. And since innovation always involves risk, it has a difficult standing with most people and thus at companies in general. But how can you use loss aversion in a way that it makes your company more innovative? For example, how can you convince your CEO that your company needs to invest more in innovative products? The key here is framing. We need to reframe innovation so that it is not perceived as a potential gain, but as a prevented loss. Because as shown earlier, people are willing to take risks when the goal is to prevent losses. A technique that I have often used successfully with C-level executives of big companies and which exploits precisely this principle is called the funeral speech. The funeral speech is a playful exercise that you can do, for example, with the management or company of a business unit that has struggled with innovation in the past and always wanted to take the safe route. The participants of this exercise are then given the task of writing a eulogy about the demise of the company. Believe me, this is funny when you force the CEO of the company to do that. So to do this, everyone has to mentally put themselves about 5 years into the future. A funeral speech starts by describing the good old days, then talks about the changes in the market, new competitors, new technologies, and highlights the inaction of the management because they always put off the topic of innovation. Each participant or team that develops a eulogy can tell a different story. Only one thing is certain: the story always ends with the downfall of the company. You can do this in small groups, and after about 30 minutes of preparation time, each group gives the speech in front of the other participants. The speech can be presented somewhat theatrically, depending on the acting talent of the participants. The only important thing is that it is taken seriously and not dismissed as a mere comedy act. The purposeful use of loss aversion through the funeral speech can break the bias toward the status quo. The funeral speech makes the risk of doing nothing visible, whereas otherwise we see only the risk of actions and innovation. If you liked this video, please give it a like. Feel free to write me as a comment what tricks you use to spark innovation in your company. In my channel, I talk about the psychology of innovation. If you like more of that, please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.